It's a triple-decker.
And they're saying, get ready for winter. It's going to be a brutal winter, and you better get all of your shots. Good old NBC News labeling it, giving us, it's like how the Weather Channel labels storms,
Yes. Tell them that's like it's
a marketing
It's a
ploy.
marketing move. So if you have like named storm coverage in your insurance, just because the news gives it a name does not necessarily mean the official governing bodies do. So you want to know that distinction, because that's just, if the Weather Channel names a storm, it's because they want to sell you coverage of that storm. Well, we have lots of coverage and things to sell you around the triple-demic. This is a 1-2-3 punch. Now, here is the headline of how they're selling it. They said, I need to be ready for another triple-demic. Well, the word another makes me feel a little better, because that means we've all, if we're watching this, we've already survived one. It's a trifecta of COVID, flu, and RSV, which we were told we went through last year. And what does NBC, in their benevolence and totally non-conflicted advice, suggest? Vaccine up, of course, because lucky us, there is now a vaccine for one of each of those things. Take a look at the way they cover this. They say that this means Americans may be urged to, or will be urged to get 3 different shots, COVID, RSV, and the annual flu shot. Although we're going to go over the RSV shot, there's only one for elderly people and babies, and one for pregnant people in the works. So that's not for everybody, even though they are saying we all need this. Now, the head of this infectious disease unit at Vanderbilt is saying, that's going to be hard because we have to learn to deliver those vaccines. And some people may be wary of getting 3 shots at once. And combining flu and COVID doesn't appear to reduce the effectiveness of either shot, but she says there's limited data suggesting that adding RSV to the mix lessens the response. There's no data. By limited data, she means no data.
Limited.
0.
Limited or 0. We're going to go with limited.
They're literally a 0. We went through last week in detail the clinical trials of the RSV vaccine we've gone through the one that's a therapeutic. It's a shot, not a vaccine for babies. And we've been through the one that is for elderly people. They were only tested based on contraction of RSV, not severity, not length, and definitely not based on other things. So there's no data. So just when you see that limited, just know that that means 0. Now, other than that, we talked about just the one for small babies, the one for 65 and older. There is also one in the works for pregnant women, but vaccine trials stopped because of a 5 to 7% risk of neonatal death. Funny how that article left that out, right? See right here where it tells us about RSV vaccines coming. For the first time this fall, it says we're going to have all of these vaccines. The monoclonal antibody shot for babies. The third up for approval has the potential risk to drastically reduce the virus in infants, and then the older adults one we already have. Well, again, nothing here is suggesting that there might be anything dangerous about these, even though the data that we've gone through from the FDA's own website from their clinical trials does suggest that. We've covered them at length, but before we just kind of go over it, let's remember that RSV for young children at least has a high survivability rate. It's less than 1% of people who get RSV who are otherwise healthy will die of it. Here's a study we went through last week. Most recently, that in a study of 42 studies, so thousands of children, showed that only 2 otherwise healthy children died of RSV. So they're saying the death rate in 42 studies of thousands of children was as low as 0.01% death rate or even lower. So you survive RSV. Most people do pretty okay with it, unless you have something else to consider. But the vaccine trials were mostly for let's go over it. Now, again, I want to point out that I know how serious RSV can be. I had a baby with RSV. Here's my baby when she's now 11. When she was 7 months old, had RSV, was hospitalized, and thankfully did fairly well. But it was scary to think of a small baby with this. So you don't want it, but with good treatment, you will fare well with it. So now the 3 shots that we have. The first one is Beyfortus. This one's for small babies. Again, not a vaccine, but at least one baby did die in the clinical trial, and 2 other clinical trials were done, but data was not released. The FDA linked to 1 clinical trial that showed many adverse events, including the baby that died and several heart attacks in babies. The other 2 clinical trials showed these results. No results found, so we can't see. They're telling us how effective it was, but not how dangerous. Here's the second one. They just don't show it. So we don't know. And it doesn't matter now because the FDA gave this a fast track approval, meaning they don't have to show us, and they never will.
And